Namaskaram. The purpose of this channel is to introduce to you some of the greatest enlightened beings and their teachings. If you imbibe the learnings, your life will be an absolute joy. Today's enlightened being is a guru who performed numerous miracles and continues to heal thousands of his devotees until today. I'm going to talk about Sri Raghavendra Swami. People fondly and reverently call him Rayaru. I was so curious how people in the modern days have been blessed by Rayaru, so I wanted to check if any incidents of his miracles available online. I was surprised to see the overwhelming answers to this topic. It's not just one or two, there are hundreds of answers about his healings. Before I tell you about his miracles, let's learn about his early life. Sri Raghavendra Swami was born as Sri Venkatanatha, the second son of Sri Timmanna Bhatta and Srimati Gopikamba in 1595, near present-day Chidambaram in Tamil Nadu. Sri Venkatanatha proved to be a very brilliant scholar from a very young age who learned to play the veena very proficiently. In fact, his forefather Kanakachala Bhatta was a veena scholar in Krishnadevaraya kingdom. After his father's demise, Venkatanatha was brought up by his brother Sri Guru Raja Bhatta and completed the initial portion of his education under his brother-in-law Lakshmi Narasimhacharya's guidance in Madurai. After his return from Madurai in 1614, Sri Venkatanatha married Srimati Saraswati Bai and had a son named Lakshmi Narasimhacharya. After his marriage, Sri Venkatanatha and his family went to Kumbakonam, where he studied the Dvaita Vedanta, grammar and literary works under his guru Sri Sudindra Theertha. Sri Venkatanatha was already very well versed in bhashyas and consistently won over renowned and reputed scholars in many debates. He spent a large part of his life teaching Sanskrit and the ancient Vedic texts to children. Do you know he never demanded any money for his services and endured a life of poverty along with his wife and son. They went without food several times a week. On one occasion, his wife did not have change of clothes. She would wear half the sari and wait for the other half to dry, but he was so devoted in his quest for higher spiritual dimension that these obstacles never deterred his faith in the Lord. Now let's understand some of his miracles and how he gathered so many devotees. Once, while he was touring Kumbakonam along with his wife, Sri Venkatanatha and his family were invited to attend a function. Unfortunately, the host did not treat him well and wanted him to earn his food by running a chore. So they asked him to make some sandalwood paste for all the invitees. Sri Venkatanatha, as usual, chanted mantras while preparing sandalwood for tilaka. When the guests applied this paste, it induced a burning sensation all over their bodies. Surprised by this, the host sought a clarification from Venkatanatha. He replied the burning sensation was due to the Agni Suktam, a mantra for the worship as defined in the Vedas, that he was chanting while preparing sandalwood, and thus eternal power of Vedic mantras revealed itself. This happens only when chanted with absolute dedication and devotion. The power is enhanced since it was chanted by someone as virtuous and devoted to Bhagwan Hari as himself. After realizing his devotion and power, the host apologized to Sri Venkatanatha and sought his forgiveness. Sri Venkatanatha then prepared the paste again but chanted the Vedic mantra to Varuna, the rain god. This time, when the guests applied this paste, they felt a sense of being drenched in rainwater, reaffirming Sri Venkatanatha's power of devotion. Now let's talk about his ordination into sannyasa as Guru Raghavendra. While his life was spent in the worship of God and service of humanity, his spiritual guru Sri Sudindra Theertha was looking for a successor to his mutt. He had a dream where the Lord indicated that Sri Venkatanatha would be the right person to succeed him as the pontiff. Sri Venkatanatha initially refused due to his responsibilities towards his young wife and son, but soon, blessed by Saraswati, the goddess of learning, she appeared in his dream and guided him to seek salvation as sannyasi. Sri Venkatanatha treated this as divine message and changed his mind. The sannyasa ordination took place in 1621 in Tanjavur. On the day of Sri Venkatanatha's entry into sannyasa ashrama, his wife Srimati Saraswati was seized by a sudden desire to see her husband's face for the last time. She ran towards the mutt but could not make it. Since she could not see her husband any longer, she committed suicide by drowning in an old, unused water well on the way. As per Hinduism, she became a ghost trapped midway between heaven and earth due to her untimely death. Since her last wish of seeing her husband was not fulfilled, her ghost went to see the mutt to witness the ordaining function. However, by the time she arrived, her husband had become a sannyasi, Sri Raghavendra Theertha. However, Sri Guru Raghavendra could immediately sense his wife's presence with his spiritual powers. He sprinkled some holy water from his kamandala on her as means of granting her last wish. This action granted her moksha, or liberation from the cycles of birth and death. On handing over the pita to Sri Raghavendra Swami, his guru Sri Sudhindra Tirtha Swami left for his heavenly abode. His Brindavana was constructed at Anegundi near Hampi under the personal supervision of Sri Raghavendra Swami. Brindavana is a structure built where saints and swamis are buried. Sri Sudhindra Tirtha Swami's Brindavana is the 9th Brindavana at the location, earning the region the popular name of Nava Brindavana. It is an extremely holy pilgrimage center for Madhavas. During Sri Raghavendra Swami's time at Kumbakonam, the Tanjavur district as a whole was reeling under the effects of a severe 12-year-long drought. The Tanjavur Nayak, ruler Sevapanayak, approached Swamiji for spiritual solace, and Raghavendra Swami advised him to perform some yagnas. As soon as these rituals were performed, there was enough rain to make the entire place green. As a mark of gratitude, the Maharaja gifted Raghavendra Swami a necklace embellished with precious stones. Swamiji put the necklace into the fire as a contribution to the yagna that he was performing then. The Maharaja took offense at this action. When Swamiji realized this, he immediately put his hand into Homakunda and retrieved the necklace in a condition identical to which it was given to him by the king. Neither the necklace nor Swamiji's hand showed any indication of having been in a raging fire. This incident only served to reaffirm the greatness of Swamiji and converted the Maharaja of Tanjavur into an ardent Bhakta of Rayuru. Later, Sri Raghavendra Swami embarked on a tour of South India, spreading the Dvaita philosophy and visiting famous pilgrimage centers such as Rameshwaram and Srirangam. At Rameshwaram, he clarified the origins of Shivalinga as the one that was installed by Lord Rama himself before his journey to Lanka to fight Ravana. As part of his yatras, he travelled to Vishnumangala, Kukke Subramanya and Udupi in Karnataka, amongst other such spiritual centers, and impressed one and all with his mastery of Dvaita philosophy. Won many admirers, gained many devotees, and published stellar works of literature and philosophy, some of which were carried around in processions of elephants as mark of respect for his brilliance. On one of his numerous travels, Sri Raghavendra Swami came across a young and poor shepherd who prostrated before him in respect. Swamiji blessed him and told the young shepherd to think of him and pray to him in times of adversity. A few days later, the Nawab or the king Siddhi Masood Khan of Adoni, who's a Persian and he did not know how to read or write the local language Telugu or Kannada. He was riding on a horse near where the shepherd's herd was grazing. At that time, an ambassador brought a letter written in local language and he gave it to Nawab. The Nawab, who did not read the local language, looked around to seek someone's help to read and explain the contents of the letter. He saw the shepherd and asked him to read and explain the contents of the letter. The shepherd too was illiterate and could not help the Nawab in understanding the contents of the letter. This angered the Nawab because the Nawab misunderstood the shepherd's inability to translate the contents of the letter as not obeying his order and threatened the man with dire consequences for failing to obey his order. The shepherd, who was in desperation by then, remembered the benevolent Swamiji who had passed by the same route a few days earlier. He prayed hard to him and tried reading the letter. Miraculously, the shepherd was able to read and explain the contents of the letter to the Nawab. Since the information was favorable to Nawab, he was impressed and he made the shepherd the Diwan of Adoni, an administrator of the local region of Adoni. Many years later, the Nawab learnt about Sri Raghavendra Swami from this man. After this incident, Sri Raghavendra Swami wanted to meet the Nawab of Adoni face to face because Swamiji wanted to build a spiritual center in Mantralayam, which was part of Nawab's kingdom. The Nawab, instead of being respectful to Swami, decided to test his spiritual skills and placed before the Swamiji a plate of non-vegetarian food completely covered with a piece of cloth and offered them to Swami. As per Hindu custom, it's a custom to offer fruit and gifts to visiting saint to seek his blessing. Swamiji took some water from his kamandala and meditated and sprinkled it on the covered plate as part of his regular practice of purifying food before consumption. He then opened the plate. To Nawab and his team's surprise, it contained fresh fruit. The Nawab immediately expressed his regret and became an ardent devotee of Swami. As an apology, he offered to give Swamiji any amount of land and wealth. While Swamiji refused any such gifts for his personal gains, he only asked that the land in Mantralayam to be handed over to his mutt. Though the Nawab of Adoni offered to give him a more fertile region, Sri Raghavendra Swami insisted on the dry and barren region around Mantralayam on the banks of Tungabhadra river. It was the region where King Prahlada had performed his yagnas to Lord Rama during the Dwapara Yuga and was hence an extremely holy land. Thus, the Mata moved to Mantralayam, where Sri Raghavendra Swami continued his spiritual journey. At Mantralayam, Sri Raghavendra encouraged Annadanam, donation of food to all devotees. It is a practice that is followed by the Mutt until today. Sri Raghavendra Swami performed penance at a place called Panchamukhi near Mantralayam in present-day Andhra Pradesh, where he received darshan of Hanuman in the form of Sri Panchamukha Mukhya Prana. Sri Guru Raghavendra is considered by his devotees to be reincarnation of Prahlada, the devotee who was saved by Vishnu in his avatar as Narasimha. Prahlada in return is believed to be a reincarnation of Shankakarna, a Devata in the Dwapara Yuga. Hence, Sri Raghavendra Swami chose Mantralayam as the location of his Brindavana. Now let me tell you about his last few days. In 1671, Raghavendra Swami gave a speech to hundreds of his devotees who had gathered to watch the event. Some quotes from that speech are here. Without right living, right thinking will never come. Right living is performing one's ordained duties according to one's station in life without hankering the afterfruit of the actions. On the other hand, offering all one's activities to the Lord. This is real sadachara, right living. This is real karma yoga. Social work done for the good of worthy people should also be considered as Lord's worship. In short, our life itself is worship. Every action is puja. This life is precious. Every second of our life is precious. Not even a second that has gone will come back. Listening to the right shastras, always remembering him is the highest duty. Always keep away from people who merely perform miracles without following the shastras and yet call themselves God or Guru. I have performed miracles, and so I have great persons like Sri Madhavacharya. These are based on Yoga Siddhi and the Shastras. There is no fraud or trickery at all. These miracles are performed only to show the greatness of God and the wonderful powers that one can attain with His grace. Right knowledge or gnana is greater than any miracle. Without this, no real miracle can take place. Any miracle performed without this right knowledge is only sorcery. No good will come to those who perform such miracles and also those who believe in them. Have devotion to Lord. This devotion should never be blind faith. Accepting the Lord's supremacy wholeheartedly is true devotion. Blind faith is not devotion, it is only stupidity. We should have devotion not only for the Lord but also for all other deities and preceptors in keeping with their status. After this speech, Sri Raghavendra entered the Brindavana, specially constructed for him with stone brought from Madhavara village near Manchale. As per his advice, these stones were sanctified by Lord Rama and Sita and Lakshmana's footsteps when they visited the village during Treta Yuga. He had advised his disciples to start arranging slabs around him once the Japamala rolling by fingers in his hand becomes still. He began reciting the Pranava mantra and slipped into deep samadhi. Once his Japamala became still, his disciples arranged the slabs up to his head, and then, as per his earlier instructions, they placed a copper box containing 1200 Lakshmi Narayana Sadigramas that had been specially brought from Gadaki river in Nepal. Then they placed the covering slab over it and filled it with earth. They poured 12,000 varahas or abhisheka over the Brindavana that they had built. Thus, Sri Raghavendra Swami attained Jiva Samadhi on Dvitiya day of Shravana in 1671. This date is celebrated each year as Sri Raghavendra Swami Aradhana at Brindavana all over the world. The Raghavendra Mutt in Mantralayam housing his Brindavana is visited by thousands of his devotees every year. It is believed he would live for 76 years physically on earth, 300 years in the Brindavana through his literary work among the people, 400 years in Brindavana without physical form, totally 700 years in the Brindavana helping the society and the mankind to come out of troubles and miseries. An incident concerning Raghavendra Swami and Sir Thomas Munro has been recorded in the Madras District Gazetteer. In 1801, while serving as a collector of Ballari, Sri Thomas Munro, who later served as the governor of Madras, is believed to have come across an apparition of Raghavendra Swami. Sir Thomas Munro recorded as having spoken with Raghavendra Swami in English over an endowment proposal which he ultimately quashed as per Swami's advice. Sri Appanacharya was one of Sri Raghavendra Swami's foremost disciples at Mantralayam. Knowing his unstinting devotion and he would try and thwart his Jiva Samadhi, Sri Raghavendra Swami sent Sri Appanacharya to a town in Karnataka on the opposite bank of Tungabhadra river before entering Brindavana to attain Jiva Samadhi. Upon hearing his beloved Swamiji's decision to enter Brindavana, Sri Appanacharya came rushing back to Mantralayam only to find Tungabhadra in full spate, a sudden flood due to the rain. Unable to cross the river, he burst into a 32-stanza song now popularly known as Sri Raghavendra Stotra as a prayer to his beloved Swami. It is said that on hearing this song, the Tungabhadra abated and allowed him to walk on her. As Sri Appanacharya rushed into the mud, he was midway through singing the last stanza of this song. At the same time, the last slab was placed on Sri Raghavendra Swami in the Brindavana. On seeing this, Sri Appanacharya was overcome with emotion and was unable to sing any further to complete the last stanza. Suddenly, a voice from the inside of Brindavana said, Sakshi Haya Stotra, completing the stotra and implying Sri Hayagriva, an avatar of Lord Vishnu with a horse head and human body, and Prahlada, and hence Sri Guru Raghavendra himself was witness to Sri Appanacharya's song. This 32 stanza shloka has acquired fame as Sri Raghavendra Stotra or Purna Bodha Stotra, since the first stanza starts with the word Sri Purna Bodha. Those who believe in Raghavendra Swami continue to feel his presence, his healings, and his miracles until today. Do visit this spiritual center, Mantralayam, to feel his grace. Thank you for watching. See you soon with another enlightened being. Namaskaram.